Which NFC receiver is being undervalued despite his starting role in a massive passing offense? Which Chiefs running back represents the best draft value for you in 2022 FFPC drafts? And which 42 FFPC Joes will battle for 7 2023 FFPC main event entries against 42 industry pros? Plus, Jack Kohlscheen, a multi-league winner in the Footballguys Players Championship, will drop in to talk about the Colts wideouts, Josh Palmer, Rob Gronkowski, and more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour officially starts now.
And the pressure, I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture, are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob, and greetings and salutations to all the Bulkaholics and Farrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. We're going to bring Farrell in shortly, but I do want to let you know that coming up on tonight's show, we're going to discuss Travis Etienne's ADP, whether KJ Osborne needs to be on your late draft target list, and then two-time FFPC, Footballguys League champion, Jack Kohlscheen is going to break down his 2022 Footballguys drafts, Isaiah Spiller's 2022 fantasy value, and much more. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, we are at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman, and always learn more about Farrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Facebook.com/HSFF Hour is where you can find us there. You can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, now's the time to send. We'll try to get to all the tweets, the emails, and all the chat room questions in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and of course, our producer and mutual friend Rob. A couple of things I want to point out. We're going to be announcing the 42 Joes that are going to be representing the FFPC and the Pros versus Joes competition shortly. Before we do get to that list, I do want to remind everybody the Footballguys early bird promo is active for a $35 discount. So if you register by the end of this month and draft by July 15th, you'll get a free $35 team credit. We'll add that up to your account 3 times at the FFPC. That's over $100 and free teams. So have fun with that. Drafting the Footballguys, take your shot at a $500,000 grand prize. The 2022 FFPC Best Ball Tournament is back, better than ever. Grand prize doubled. Prize pool nearly doubled. That's a lot of fun as well. $125 could get you $200,000. Inaugural Superflex Best Ball Tournament is off and running as well. $35 could get you a chance at $10,000 in that. Dynasty Startup still available. We got a ton of those going off tomorrow, this weekend, and throughout the week. And of course, plenty of slow, live, and sit and go best ball options at myffpc.com. If you prefer a 12-team closed league, want to play in a Terminator format, you want to play in a varsity format, best ball slim, whatever. All those are available at myffpc.com. And don't forget to register for the Run to Daylight Championship at kffsc.com. 5 spots left in Sunday's draft, plus the Draft Masters, and of course the main event, awarding a $25,000 grand prize there. Now, let's get to the moment we've all been waiting for, or I know many of you are waiting for. I'm about to read the 42 FFPC Joes that will be representing the FFPC against 42 industry stalwarts, industry pros in our 2022 version of the FFPC Pros versus Joes Challenge. All 7 of these drafts will be, all 12 drafters in each one of these 7 drafts will be fighting for a 2023 FFPC main event free entry, which is about a $2,000, $2,100 value. So lots at stake here. And we're giving away 7 of those. The only people who were eligible for the Joe's drawing were those who put a deposit down or paid for their teams in full by the main event early bird deadline, which was May 31st. We want to thank the support that we got from so many players who signed up, registered their teams, It's going to be an awesome year. As a reminder, we are awarding $1 million grand prize this year. First time, not only in our history, but in season-long fantasy football history as well, that $1 million grand prize is going to be awarded. Now, these 42 Joes will, I should say 30 of them. My math is totally wrong on this. Yeah, 30, right? No, 36. 36 of them. I knew I'd get it right. 36 of them, we will cover their drafts live on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour coming up July 24th, 25th, and 26th. And of course, July 31st, August 1st, and August 2nd. The other 6 will be participating in a slow draft, which we will not be broadcasting on here, but you can definitely check out. We'll have the boards up at the FFPC message board. They will be posted there, those boards, as well as the FFPC Twitter and the FFPC Facebook. Speaking of which, for the first time tonight, we're not only broadcasting live on YouTube, we're also broadcasting live on Twitter and on Facebook. So make sure if you want to check out those venues and watch this show going forward, you definitely can do that. Facebook.com/Fantasy Football Players Championship, Twitter.com/FFPC. Without further ado, here are the 42 Joes that will be playing against those industry pros. Rashad Cobb will be one of them. Tim Deneau, a former FFPC main event champion, and another one, Chad Schroeder, will also be in Pros versus Joes this year. A guy who has participated in it before, Henry Muto, is back in Pros versus Joes this year. Grant Dempsey, congratulations, you're in. Shelley Fossum, a former guest of this show, she'll be playing. Chris Chapman, John Hurd, a guy who's also been on this show before, he's going to be in Pros versus Joes this year. Julio Fuentes, congratulations. Chris Hammond, a guest that we're going to be having, and I'll tell you about him at the end of the show, but Shane Wingard is also going to be in Pros versus Joes. He's going to be on this program next week. Very exciting there. Lou Tranquilli, a longtime FFPC player and a guy who's been on this program before. Welcome aboard to Pros versus Joes. William Van Ormer, Vince Staffolino, Steve Schatzel, all in. Michael Zucca. By the way, Staffolino, former guest of the show, so is Michael Zucca. And the next guy, Michael Apt, a guy who is a former Footballguys Players Championship overall winner. They are all in. Matt Marcoux, Kevin Proctor, Jeremy Ween, all in. That's 20 of them. Jeff Gill makes 21, so we're halfway through the list. Congratulations to those 21 owners. Here are the final 21. A guy you're familiar with, Jason Steves, was just on the road of his high-stakes slowdown. He will be in as well. Peter Kuluberis will also be in. Congratulations there. Larry Weinhauer, longtime FFPC player. You've heard him on these broadcasts before. Joshua Durham, Jeremiah Turner, Jay Scaffarello. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I tried to practice these names beforehand, but that's no guarantee I'm going to get them right. James DeVito, Daniel Osorio, Chris Birchby, Brian Harris, another couple of guys who've been on the program before. And of course, Adrian Quintana, John Terry, guy who had 2 teams in the top 10 in the Footballguys Players Championship last year. He's in, as well as Justin Baker, John McLaughlin, and Liz Ballard also in. That is 36. Here are the final 6 that are in. David Garcia, Danny Mueller, a guy I know a lot of people are familiar with, former FFPC main event co-champ Philip Hooton. Welcome to Pros versus Joes. James Kearney, Chris Carlson, another former guest of the show. And the final Pros versus Joe this year will indeed be Roy Parenzuela. So congratulations, Roy Parenzuela, and the other 41 Joes that are participating in the 2022 FFPC Pros versus Joes. Darren Armani from FantasyMojo.com, at FantasyMojo on Twitter. He'll be reaching out to you, and he'll kind of gauge what date, what time, what format work best for you as you try to take down a 2023 main event entry. I'll mention this at the end of the show before we sign off tonight, but these names will be posted to the FFPC message boards. We'll post links on it on our Facebook page, as well as the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hours Facebook page, and then both the HSFF Hour and FFPC Twitter pages will have links to this in case you missed your name. Congratulations, and carry the FFPC badge with honor as you take on these industry pros. Welcome in the one, the only, the incomparable Farrell Elliott onto the program tonight. Farrell, welcome aboard. That is a good-looking group of Joes that are going to try to take out the pros again this year.
And what a fantastic job you did of welcoming them, Balky. And, I think you guys have done a very good job. I don't see many names being repeated there that played last year. There's a lot of worthy players to play in that event. And I think you did really well. I've got some guys that I can root for right out of the bat. Danny Mueller, Vince Staffolino, great Kentucky players along with Shane Wingard. You know, you mentioned Shelley Fossum. I've always had great admiration for her play. I think she's a terrific player. I would be so honored if she would grace us in Kentucky with her appearance.
Yes.
What a super player she is. And then all the guests that we've had on the show, I recognize some of the names. One of the names, not that the professor was not there, our beloved boys from FPI, Petri and Larson, not there. They'll take it hard, but they'll get over it and be ready for next year.
Well, and the other thing too is, you know, it is cool to be in pros versus Joes because you're competing for a main event entry.
Yeah.
But Reeve, Petrie, Larson, I mean, they're all competing for $1 million in the FFPC this year too. I'm sure they'd much rather take that home. And there's always next year, as you said too. So congratulations to all of those people who were selected in the random drawing. And good luck. We will maybe they'll be on. We'll get them on the show. Some of these guys, we'll get them on the show before they draft or maybe after they draft and talk with them. All right, let's move on to Fantasy Flash and talk a little bit about what a letdown. We go from the pros versus Joes to see who's in. Let's talk New York Jets football here.
Yeah.
Mike Kay from Pro Football Network says that Zach Wilson's actually been struggling with his accuracy in OTAs for the Jets. He said that Wilson got off to a rough start in team drills. His first 4 passes was a throw behind Corey Davis, a throw that went over everybody, a throwaway, and after he was flushed in the pocket, and then a heavily targeted second-year wide receiver, Elijah Moore, had a pass thrown to him, heavily covered, beg your pardon. So not that great. No quarterback last year had a worse completion rate than expected. Only Justin Fields had a worse adjusted completion rate. Those stats courtesy of Pro Football Focus. Wilson apparently has put on some weight this offseason, and the Jets brought in some talent for him. Jeremy Ruckert, Breece Hall. They're bringing back Elijah Moore. They bring in Garrett Wilson as well, and then bring aboard Laken Tomlinson to try to protect him. Kay says the recipe is there for him to make a jump. It's hard to make a prediction on what's going to happen right now in June. And I guess the question here, Farrell, not necessarily. I mean, if you're in Superflex, you're obviously drafting Zach Wilson. If you're in a single quarterback league, you're probably not. But what about these other Jets pass catchers? I got to be honest with you. I'm down on Ruckert, down a little bit on Michael Carter, down on Corey Davis. I think the pathway is there, even with Zach Wilson, for fantasy relevance for not only Elijah Moore, but maybe for Garrett Wilson in best ball leagues as well.
It's interesting how our writer, Mr. K, threw a little bone in there at the very end that said, you know, there's possibility, and he says a lot of words, a lot of hog. Balky went into getting that 1 pound of sausage out of there, which seems like he's not a Zach Wilson fan. But I will tell you this, Zach Wilson's last year, as he parades the statistics out as a rookie player, he was given the job from the moment that he was there. He lost Davis, he lost Moore, he had underperforming tight ends, and he lost the best 2 of those. He was trying to beat you with Braxton Berrios and Jamison Crowder, which those are great complementary players, but they're not going to get it done in this world's NFL. So I would say that to not sour on your Jet players until you've made up your mind and see with your own eyes how far Wilson has come, certainly not the first 4 passes of OTAs. The guy I like here seems to be the forgotten man in draft, because if we're going to buy into what Mr. K is saying, and that if we're having struggles with the downfield passing game, I think we need to turn and look again to Michael Carter. Last year, there were close to 400 rushes in this backfield, and we cannot expect the rookie running back to get all of them. Michael Carter, 36 balls. You got to remember, he only played in about 12 or 13 games, as I recall, last year. He missed a big chunk in the middle of the season. He averaged 4.5 yards a carry behind a line that was suspect. He found the end zone 4 times for a Jets offense that didn't find the end zone often. Michael Carter seems to me, Balky, in the football guys that I'm doing right now, I see him around the 11th and 12th round, and I think that's good bargain for this player, and maybe a little late for him.
This is a player that a lot of people are excited about up until when the Jets drafted Breece Hall, you know. So does Breece Hall's addition change Michael Carter's talent all of a sudden? No. Yeah, it hurts his opportunity. But the fact that he has now plunged to running back 45 at the 1104 in Isaiah Spiller, Naheem Hines, Tyler Allgeier territory I think there's some upside there. So you might be talking me into Michael Carter. I think, obviously, I mean, if you go zero RB, he's a great guy to add. If you want to, if you're grabbing other people's cuffs, as it were, to try to maximize your variance for this tournament, to try to take down the whole thing with a monster squad, Michael Carter makes a lot of sense in the 11th round. Let's stick with Mike K's reporting. He actually says that James Washington is going to, quote, shine in the Cowboys offense. Now, Michael Gallup is recovering from the ACL. Mari Cooper is in Cleveland, so James Washington could be starting week 1. He's 26 years old. He has a foot injury right now that prevented him from participating in OTAs for Dallas, but it's a minor thing. He's supposed to be ready by minicamp, supposed to be well on his way by training camp. Was not used often by the Steelers. I don't know if that's because of the quarterback or if it's because of the other receivers that were there in Claypool and Deontay Johnson. And Juju Smith-Schuster, quite frankly, for part of the time. In 6 games where he got at least 7 targets, averaged just under 5 catches, just under 70 yards, and half a touchdown a game, which is pretty good numbers. Now gets Dak Prescott, that high-octane Dallas passing offense. And I got to tell you, I know people still love Michael Gallup, myself included, but when you look at James Washington right now in the Football Guys Players Championship ADP, shout out to Darren Armani, FantasyMojo.com, and Fantasy Mojo on Twitter, where we get all these details from. Wide receiver 83 at the 17th round. Dude could be starting for a high-volume pass offense. If he is looking that way and it looks like Gallup's not going to be ready, this is a massive, massive value right now. And if you are drafting in Football Guys, which you should be, if you are, this is a guy you should get on your teams, Farrell.
Oh, I think so, especially at that buy point. Now, after everyone listens to this show, Balky, he'll shoot up the boards, and we've got to identify where he quits being a value. I look at this offense, and I look at who's already there. Pollard, a recovering Gallup, an explosive and superstar player ascending in C.D. Lamb. The tight end, I think, going off 5th in our drafts will prove to be perhaps the third tight end in points this season in FFPC scoring. So I really do like the pieces in place, and I like how they're going to work in Pollard and get he and Ezekiel both on the field at the same time. We've always been waiting for that. I think this is the year we might get it. That being said, I have a soft spot for players returning home. James Washington has had a hard time getting that career started. He's from a small town in Texas, went to play for the Cowboys of Oklahoma State, and now he comes home. And I think that can really, really boost his career. But, Cedric Wilson last year was a very top contributory player to this offense, just shy of 50 catches, a lot of touchdowns. I think he got 2 in one game, as many as 6 on the season. Jalen Tolbert is going to be there as well. You take Tolbert and you take Washington, you look at what Cedric Wilson did, who's taken his game to Miami. You expect similar numbers, and nobody was going to really win with that. So I think this is a true handcuff that will get similar numbers to Cedric Wilson, and you can call that a success when he does.
Yeah, Jalen Tolbert, it's weird. Tolbert's the rookie coming in, and ostensibly you would think he'd be the number 4 guy, at least to start off the season if Gallup's healthy. Football Guys right now, 14th round. That's, more than 3 rounds of where James Washington is going ahead, or where Washington is going behind him right now. So I don't really understand that. This is Alec Pierce, Tim Patrick, George Pickens, David Bell territory, where Tolbert's scoring. A lot of rookie receivers bunched up there, including Jahan Dotson right ahead of him as well. So, yeah, I don't really understand the Tolbert thing, and the Washington thing makes a lot of sense for sure. We do have Jack Kohlscheen, the multi-league winner in the Football Guys Players Championship, coming up in just 1 minute here. The last thing I want to get to before we get to Jack is talk a little bit about another rookie receiver in wide receiver Jamison Williams, who's recovering off that torn ACL. Detroit Free Press had a report today that said Jamison Williams being ready for the start of the season, quote, it's going to be a challenge. Now, this was the national championship game in January against Georgia when he tore this ACL. Most of the reports that we've got on him so far have been good. Some people have gone as far to say that he's going to be ready for week 1. Even if he is, though, let's just take a look at this. Didn't do anything in OTAs. He is probably not going to be doing anything in minicamp. got to be honest with you, even if he gets to training camp, he's going to be behind because he is a rookie and there is a lot to learn. And there is the speed of the game aspect that he needs to catch up on. Hasn't been able to practice with the team, just doing mental reps, apparently. He could be pupped. I mean, that's a decision Detroit will have to make down the road, and then he'd be out for the first 6 games of the season. Very exciting prospect to have Jamison Williams on your fantasy roster, but I think I'd be much more excited in Dynasty. Redraft, I'm very skittish about drafting this guy, especially when Jared Goff already has a rapport with Amon-Ra St. Brown. They brought in DJ Chark, who we've already seen him do it in Jacksonville. I don't know about Jamison Williams in the Football Guys Players Championship right now, Farrell, and for to get the mojo on him right now, to tell you where he's going. He is wide receiver 53 in the 10th round. Little too rich for my blood.
It is for me too. And this is a player that I think people that do draft him will tire of him. It's hard to leave a player on your roster that could start the season on the PUP. He's a player that if he comes, if someone does tire of him and has to fill that spot, he's a guy that you can add as we go into the bye weeks as you see him get on the field. You also, Bucky, you might have it at your hand. This player's measurables, his physicality, exactly how much he weighs and how he's adapting to the NFL. It's a different game. He was an exciting player in college, but it's a different game than what he's going to be experiencing in the NFL. I'm with you. Let's don't buy here. Let's let someone else take that risk, but definitely not in the 10th round. There's players going in the middle of the double-digit rounds, 14, 15, 16, that will have 60, 70 catches, multiple touchdowns. I don't think this guy's one of them.
Yeah, and maybe I'll be wrong, and I'll be pleasantly, I hope he proves me wrong, because for Dynasty, I love him. I think he's going to be awesome. Sure. NFL.com lists him at 6'1.5", 179 pounds. So certainly a good frame to grow into if he can put on some more weight, because he's got the chops. He's got the talent. Very excited to see what he can do in the NFL. I'm also very excited to hear what our guest has to say tonight. I want to bring him in right now, ladies and gentlemen. He has played fantasy football for well over a decade. He's a 2-time Football Guys Players Championship League winner, a Chargers fan, father of 2 kids who he says are way smarter than him. Can't wait till those kids turn 18 and they start playing in the FFPC. Everyone's doomed at that point if they're smarter than he is right now. He's here tonight to talk about his draft so far this summer. Please welcome into the program, Jack Kohlscheen. Jack, welcome in. Thanks for doing the show, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It's awesome.
Hey, Jack.
So the kids are smarter than you already. This is a scary prospect if they get into fantasy football.
The daughter already is. She's 6 and she likes to draft along. But she's got her own methods about what she likes to look at their face and see if they look nice, and she likes to hear how their names sound. So I feel like between her methods and mine, we've kind of got all the bases covered.
It's yeah, she would be an expert at picking horses too. So that's true.
Yeah.
This is like analytics meets film study right now.
It's a whole new type of study.
Yeah,
it's really breaking ground. So.
What's her name, Jack?
Adair.
Oh, I love it.
All right, very pretty. I know you were in pharmaceuticals,
yes.
Jack. What can you tell us about what you're doing in that industry?
So I monitor the market and our competitors to try to identify potential shortages in the drug market, and then try to flex our manufacturing to respond to that to make sure that essential medicines don't go unproduced. So, yeah.
You're really a spy, aren't you, Jack? You're really deep cover. You're actually, yep. I understand. There's nothing on the walls behind you. There's nothing to give away a location.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I'm glad you're a great fan. That's a wonderful job. Well, look, if you're a Chargers fan, that makes you an expert on the Kansas City Chiefs. So let's go to a Kansas City Chief question. When Clyde Edwards-Helaire first came out of school and he was in that draft in his rookie season, man, did he shoot up the boards. I don't remember exactly where he settled. I'm thinking 3rd round, sometime around the middle of that year, I learned how to pronounce his name. And as soon as I learned how to pronounce his name, his productivity took a dive. And so I'm curious now that he's in the 5th, 6th, sometimes 7th round, what you think about this player and what you think about the other running backs on the squad, especially Ronald Jones, who comes in from Tampa.
Well, I think at least at his current ADP, he's gone for me from just flat undraftable to plausible. I like him more based on kind of the environment. So the AFC West, I think, is going to be the most competitive division in the league. Tons of shootouts on a team that, without Tyreek Hill, there's a lot of opportunity for receptions near the line of scrimmage. So I think that there's a lot of environmental reasons why he could be really good. I also, there's that report that apparently he had gallbladder surgery and it wasn't reported on, but between the 20 and 21 seasons, and apparently lost a bunch of weight in between and wasn't quite right for the last training camp. So maybe he will be more explosive this season. So I guess at that price, plausible. I like having exposure to the Chiefs and the schedule they have. He's certainly going to get the receiving work because if we know anything about Ronald Jones, it's that he can't catch a pass. So I think he's going to be the inside the tackles guy. There's certainly worth to that. My favorite Chiefs running back, though, is actually taking a flyer on Isaiah Pacheco. You can get like 19th, 20th round. Certainly no draft capital, but he is just he's got all the reasons why you'd want to pick a Chiefs running back going for him. Now, on top of that, he's more explosive, a lot faster. I think 4.3 40, like 212 pounds, and just a freak athlete. So
when did you discover Isaiah?
Actually, I think it was J.J. Zacharyson, just in an offhanded comment somewhere, just said that he was somebody who his model, the athletics, kind of piqued his interest. So that's when I started looking into him. He's a Rutgers guy, and he certainly wouldn't be the only like late round or undrafted Rutgers guy to end up having a kind of an unheralded but important career.
And I agree with you 100%. And I think his NFL career could overshadow his college career right away. That's a very good point.
It's kind of interesting as I look at the ADP, and I just posted it in the YouTube chat. But Edwards-Hilaire's ADP is 603 right now. This is a dude. It seems like his ADP goes down 3 rounds every year. It's like a first round pick his rookie year. Then he slipped to like the 3rd or 4th. Now he's in the 6th round. And this is Elijah Mitchell territory. This is Miles Sanders territory. AJ Dillon, Ken Walker. If you do go 0 RB, you're going to have some pretty good choices as your number 1 running back if you make it to the 6th round. And allegedly, the number 1 running back on what could be the number 1 offense in the NFL is still there. Pretty crazy stuff to think about. Javonte Williams, speaking of what could be the number 1 offense, where do you stand on him? This is a guy that had creeped up when Melvin Gordon was not signed. He had creeped up to the late 1st round, sometimes the mid 1st round by some of the crazies out there. I'm just kidding. I say that with love. But Javonte Williams now has fallen to the 210. He did fall, obviously, after the Gordon signing. Maybe not as much as people thought. So, Jack, where do you stand on him? If he gets to be the 210, you're on the clock. You looking at Javonte Williams there?
Absolutely. I've drafted him there, and I've drafted him earlier. I'm probably irresponsibly high on Javonte Williams. But that being said, I don't think the Melvin Gordon signing was that big of a deal to me because I just anticipated that they're going to sign somebody. And so, or they could have gone out and drafted somebody. So that the fact that they, weren't going to sign him unless he took a $1 million, like 2.5 million 1-year deal. They were fine without him if he wasn't going to take those terms. So, he's going to be 29. Javonte's 22. So their trajectories are headed opposite ways. I know they're saying 50-50, but it's a new coaching staff, so you never quite know. And to me, I think the impact that Russell Wilson will have on the offense, just in terms of sustaining drives and getting into the red zone overall, means I think Javonte is going to have quite a bit of upside in that AFC West. If anything, Melvin Gordon is just being underdrafted. I don't think Javonte Williams is being overdrafted.
You bring that up right now. I'm going to check the mojo on Melvin Gordon right now as far as where he's going over the last. This is, by the way, all the ADP I'm referencing on unless otherwise. I'm referencing from Fantasy Mojo, and it is within the last 7 days in the Football Guys Players Championship only. Running back 37 for Melvin Gordon at the 907. That's Rashad Penny, Ronald Jones, Alexander Madison territory. Ooh. That seems tasty too. See, now I'm liking everybody. I hate when this happens. We get on these topics and conversation, And then it's like, man, I like that guy there, and I only have 20 picks. If I'm, drafting in Kentucky or private leagues or what have you, I only have 20 picks, and then I ended up, I want all these guys. So maybe I should recuse myself from the Travis Etienne question here, Farrell, and then that way I won't be overdrafting everybody this year.
Oh, it's hard to overdraft Jags, but if you're going to do it, you probably start with Travis Etienne. I think we could get back. Jack, you're obviously good with numbers. You've drafted a lot. You know how to position these drafts and know where the value is. I'm curious if we can put together a 20-man roster of all AFC West players. That's going to be one of my goals.
I've tried hard.
Have you really?
I've got several teams that are just dedicated to AFC West in one form or another. So
I drafted 5 Raiders on a squad the other night, which made me very excited. I think Balky was, and I drafted 4 Jags on that club, all of them in double-digit rounds, all of them late. So I didn't get Travis, but I think a returning Travis Etienne makes everyone on that team better. He's explosive. He's an excellent player, and he is a standalone running back as your number 2 running back in the 4th round. Isn't that quite a bargain for you this year?
I think if Travis Etienne would have played and not even had a great season, but just modest, showed some promise, we'd be drafting him at the end of the second, even if he didn't completely break out as a rookie. So I think the fact that he, around like where Javonte is going, I think the fact that he didn't play, he's being put in the 4th round, not because there's some kind of concern about his game. There's just uncertainty because we haven't really seen it yet. But he's got control of the role. We have no idea when we'll see James Robinson. And when we do, ACL recoveries are going to not have that same explosiveness. I'm not worried about Snoop Connor. So other than that, I mean, Travis Etienne owns the running back room. He's got the history with Trevor Lawrence. And I think as bad as the offense, appears, it can only go up from Urban Meyer. And I think the environment that created, I think people are actually going to want to play for the team. So I think it can only go up.
So when we get out to Las Vegas in the main event, where do you think Travis will be drafted then?
And I'll tell you right now, Jack, 402 is his ADP by Breece Hall, Cam Akers, David Montgomery. How high do you think he's going to ascend?
I think early 3rd by the time we're in September.
Okay.
Interesting. Let's and by the way, we're talking with Jack Kohlscheen tonight, a multi-league winner in the Footballguys Players Championship. Let's talk about another AFC West team in Denver. Russell Wilson has a ton of weapons. Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Albert Okwuegbunam, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams. The list goes on and on and on and on. Now, as far as fantasy goes, if you could only pick one of these guys for the purposes of this question, which is the Bronco pass catcher or skill position guy that you want to have on your team if you can only have one in order to maximize your production?
Well, as much as I like Javonte, I think my answer there is Cortland Sutton, especially, right now in the 5th. I think that he is a prime candidate for the wide receiver in the, just out of the first couple rounds that jumps into the 1st or 2nd round next year. I think, Russell Wilson has had a top 15 receiver every single year he's played. So I think it's very reasonable that he'll have at least one wide receiver one, given, the AFC West, the competitive environment. And between the two of them, between Jeudy and Sutton, I'm not out on Jerry Jeudy, but I just think, first of all, Cortland Sutton, we've seen it before. He had the 2019 season where it was a really productive season, even with terrible quarterbacking. We haven't quite seen that from Jerry Jeudy yet. And, Cortland Sutton seems to fit the DK Metcalf role, where, the big-bodied outside speed size threat doing the out routes. Tyler Lockett, more the Jerry Jeudy comparison there. I feel like in your first year in the new system, new players, the DK role is probably easier to have quicker traction. Tyler Lockett, it took years to really develop that relationship, the chemistry, the timing, the trust. So I think next year redraft Cortland Sutton at 5th time. If he's in the 5th at any point, no matter what kind of build I'm doing, I'll draft him.
Balky, I've got a quick follow-up for that. One statement and then a quick follow-up because there's two other players that I would really, really like to get Jack's opinion on. And I'm personally affronted that you left Tyreek McAllister out of that list of players that could possibly. And then Tim Patrick, Jack. Tim Patrick. I'm impressed with this player's skill set. Where does he fall in this multitude of wide receivers? And then who do you think is the tight end at Denver?
Yeah, I like Tim Patrick. I think Tim Patrick can be a producer even as the third wide receiver. He doesn't need to have an injury in order to get some sort of prominence. I guess the hesitation I have with Tim Patrick is usually when you start to draft him at that point in the draft, I'm looking for a higher upside dart throw, whereas Tim Patrick is a more reliable fill-in. So I guess I prefer to look for those higher upside plays, and I think he's a more steady hand. It's in terms of tight ends, I don't see what the big deal is. I think it's going to be Alberto pretty clearly. All of the efficiency metrics show that he's one of the most efficient tight ends last season with the limited opportunities that he had. I know they went out and drafted a tight end. He's certainly, I think, long term, he'll be the reason that Alberto doesn't re-sign with Denver. But Kyle Pitts having an impact in his first year as a tight end was a pretty freakish thing. I don't think we should expect it from just anybody.
I try to picture Lombardi walking around the sidelines talking about efficiency metrics. I just can't. Okay, now I'm in drafts. There's a name that comes up all the time, and I say, why does this guy get drafted? And then I go look at the numbers, and I repeat, why does this guy get drafted? I'll go through the drafts and pick out the players that I never even consider. And this is one that I never even consider. Maybe I'm making a mistake. KJ Osborne. When I look at the numbers, I see some promise there, but then I usually see that he puts those numbers up in games where Thielen is compromised with some type of injury. Can you tell us anything about KJ Osborne? You got to love the fact that he's got a strong arm quarterback with him, but is there anything else?
Oh, I love KJ Osborne this year.
Whoa.
I think I grab him whenever I can towards the end. I think the transition from Zimmer to O'Connell, they're going from a very conservative, slow play calling to, basically the Rams offensive coordinator. So we can fully expect a very Rams-like offense there. So I think you're going to see a whole lot more, a quicker pace of play, probably a little bit more tilting towards passing, but more importantly, more three wide receiver sets than you used to see in Minnesota. So I think that can help KJ Osborne have a role, regardless of, if everybody stays healthy. But I do think, Adam Thielen can only keep doing this for so long. He's certainly reaching he's going to be declining here at some point, and I'd rather get out ahead of it. But even
he is the Brady. He's the Brady of wide receivers. He's the Brady of wide receivers. He's going to play. So you're telling me that they're going to turn KJ Osborne into Van Jefferson, which I can see that.
I think there's going to be a lot more volume, and it's either going to be him or Irv Smith that maybe fills in for that additional stuff. But I can get KJ Osborne 2 or 3 rounds later. So
gotcha.
And bear this in mind too. And I know this is this, you don't draft a player based on this, but when you look at who you could be drafting, by the way, to give you the mojo on KJ Osborne right now, 1604 in Footballguys drafts, Josh Palmer, Odell Beckham, Kendrick Bourne territory. God forbid Adam Thielen, who's not the youngest spring chicken in the world, were to go down, or Justin Jefferson, which I know nobody wants to hear, myself included. I'm not going to say it, but if he were to miss time for whatever reason, KJ Osborne would step in to what you would think is a more, as Jack said, a more modern pass offense that seemed to work out pretty well in Los Angeles. There is a lot to like about KJ Osborne in the 16th round. Speaking of Josh Palmer, you are a Chargers fan. Can you sell our viewers on why Palmer would also be a good pick if you maybe miss on Osborne, maybe he's gone at that 15-16 turn? Why would Palmer make a good selection there instead?
Well, first of all, Josh Palmer rates very highly on my daughter's nice looking face model. So that's important. I'm I'm clearly biased, but I think as objective as I could be, the Chargers have a really good shot of being the top offense in the league, if not the top, a top three. Working in that AFC West, they've improved their offensive line. There's now, continuity in their offense at the second year under Lombardi, so not relearning the playbook and all of that. So it's a good environment for him to be in. It is a very cheap cost to get into the Chargers overall team. It's his second year where we're typically seeing breakouts, and we saw at least some promise. I think he has more versatility than Jalen Guyton, who's just sort of a wind sprints down the field. So if there were something to happen to either Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, I think he could easily get the first shot at that role. Mike Williams is fantastic, but he plays really hard and aggressive and falls really hard. And it just seems to be like injuries as a part of his game. But I think the biggest thing for me is the cost. So I would put him the wide receiver 3 for a top offense. So another top offense is the Bills. So you've got Jamison Crowder for the Bills, another wide receiver 3, two full rounds earlier than Josh Palmer. One full round earlier is Will Fuller, who hasn't even signed with the team. And several picks earlier than Josh Palmer is George Pickens, who's the wide receiver 3 for an offense that is far worse than the Chargers. So I think he is a really modest cost way to get into an explosive offense later on down the line. He could take on a greater responsibility, especially with injury. And week 17, they play the Rams. So, there's always that.
Farrell's going to ask you about Gronk here in a second, but I do want to say this about Josh Palmer. I never liked Mike Williams almost ever. There was one Kentucky draft. I drafted him, and it was because inexplicably he was still out there super late. And he was like my number 6 receiver. And he had a pretty good season, actually. But Mike Williams, who I didn't draft last year, I drafted Josh Palmer in a ton of my rookie drafts last year in Dynasty based on the fact that I thought Mike Williams would be gone. Like somebody would give him the Brinks truck elsewhere and he wouldn't be back with the Chargers. I drafted a couple early Kentucky leagues, Farrell, where I drafted Josh Palmer. Very excited because I thought he was going to be the number 2 for Los Angeles. And what do the Chargers do? They go out and they give Mike Williams $1 billion. And now Palmer, I have to wait again until Williams either, moves on or misses time or what have you. So Mike Williams, even though I'm not drafting him, he's still finding a way to screw my fantasy team. Unbelievable.
Adair, I would like you to show. I'd like you to put Balky side by side, and Balky and I side by side, and show Adair, the frozen screenshot picture of this tomorrow, and I'd like to see who has the nicest face, because if I win, Balky, that beard has to go.
Oh, no.
The beard must go if Adair picks this mug over yours. An expansive question about tight ends. I'm interested in what you know and what you think about Gronkowski. I drafted him very early. I've been drafting since January. I'm on the clock now. I haven't drafted him lately, but I think he's coming back to play. I cannot let you get out of this seat without talking about the Charger tight end position. And if we can ever get and I think that I'll tie this into Gronkowski by saying there's a reason Gronkowski keeps playing every year is we just never can get the element of the tight end to develop league-wide. There's a shortage of tight ends league-wide. And will Gerald Everett be a great Charger addition? So first Gronkowski and then follow up a little bit on Everett, because I'm sure you have some very nice insight there as well.
I agree with you. I've got no reason to believe that Gronk is not coming back for one more year now that Tom's unretired. And as a result, last season he was tight end 8 despite playing like only 12 games. I think he was like the 3rd tight end in points per game. So if you look at the current tight end 8 being drafted, it's Dallas Goedert. And I believe it's 3 full rounds, like 2 or 3 ahead. So I interpret that as the uncertainty around his retirement is worth like a 2 to 3 round discount. And in the tight end, I'll take that risk. I think it sounds pretty consistent with what we know about him, that he wants his summer. He's got his cruise line stuff and his parties that he does. He's able to get, since he's got that chemistry with Tom, he doesn't need the full summer to get ready. So I think it's pretty consistent that he will re-sign in June or July in time for training camp.
Jack, if you draft Gronkowski, say in the 9th round or 10th round or whatever, does that change the way you draft tight ends in the back half of your draft or no?
You mentioned Gerald Everett, and I was going to say he is a great pick to kind of bolster and take care of the downside risk to Gronkowski. I think he is still he's going late enough that he's pretty affordable, and yet I think he's got more upside than the tight ends he's being drafted around. Just being a part of that offense. Again, he's more efficient than Jared Cook was, so I think there's going to be at least more opportunity for upside than Jared Cook. And I think if I had to rely on him because the rest of my team is stacked, I wouldn't be too upset. But having Gronk and him as another option is a pairing that I've done several times.
Go to a couple of emails here that we have from listeners. Another Chargers question, actually. Jim in Corona, New York. Hey, Jack, is Isaiah Spiller a high-value backup to draft this year? What will he do if Eckler misses any time? Thank you for the email, Jim in Corona, New York. Thanks for listening. This is kind of morbid. We're talking about a lot of Chargers injuries here tonight. What if Eckler gets hurt? What if Mike Williams gets hurt? What if Keenan Allen gets hurt?
Unfortunately, there's a lot of history of that.
That was what I was going to allude to. We have Ron Meyer, two-packer, in the chat right now. He is a big Chargers fan. And he's been saying that they need to retool that strength and conditioning portion of that team for like what seems to be like a decade plus. But let's just say Eckler, maybe he holds out. Maybe he's got something going on. He wants to see a concert in Europe. He wants to get away from the team. Maybe he's still healthy, but he misses time. Is Isaiah Spiller the guy there, or is he just part of a committee?
I think Isaiah Spiller, as far as a profile, is different than Josh Kelly or Larry Roundtree in that he's got enough of a versatile profile that he could still be the big back, the goal line back, the early downs, but then could also take on at least some receiving work. Maybe not the full bevy of Eckler's targets, but I think he could take on enough of that to become a 3-down back in Austin Eckler's absence. A lot of backs around that area might be part of a split that they're not really able to take the full role, but I think he's closer to Eckler. Obviously different strengths, but he's closer to Eckler than the previous 3 to 4 Chargers running backs that have been drafted. They're just kind of one piece of the puzzle. Because he represents more of that, and again, that offensive line that was above average to begin with. Even if Eckler doesn't get injured, I think for where he's being drafted represents good upside.
Just getting the mojo on Spiller. I think we might have mentioned it earlier in the broadcast when we were talking about another running back. Yeah, right. He goes right ahead of Michael Carter in the 11th round as far as running back 44 behind Darrell Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson. One last email here, Jack, for you. John in North Canton, Ohio. Which Colts wideout would you rather draft this year, Paris Campbell or Alec Pierce? Appreciate it, man. That is John in North Canton, Ohio. So Campbell or Pierce, before you answer this, I'll get you the ADP over the last 7 days. And if I remember looking at this earlier, I was kind of surprised. Yeah, Alec Pierce, wide receiver 66 at the 1407. Paris Campbell is actually going at wide receiver 60 at the 1303. So I guess they are more similar than I thought, but still about a round and a half is Campbell going ahead of Pierce. Is that the way that you would have him too, Jack?
I think roughly. I think that, to be honest, the difference is negligible in terms of the two. I think they're fairly close to each other, and I think it's going to be at least the passing offense, so heavily slanted towards Pittman that I have not found many. I think I've drafted Paris Campbell a couple times, but I'm not looking to draft either one of them in that area.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Farrell, final question for Mr. Kohlscheen here.
I really love the way that you approach players and your knowledge about a great deal of players. So this question is going to be hard for you on two sides because I want a player that you're really targeting, that you really love, and one we haven't talked about so far tonight. And then the other thing that you might find is that you might have a little bit of trouble with is who you're going to avoid drafting, who you really don't like, and why.
So we did a good job of going through my late round target list through some of these questions, but another one that I like to go after that maybe doesn't get a lot of buzz right now is Kennedy Brooks, the rookie running back, Philadelphia Eagles. The team as a whole, I think they've really embraced the offensive identity. They've obviously invested in the O-line. They went out and got A.J. Brown, who, even as a receiver has that kind of very physical yards after the catch, beat 'em up type of play. So I think they've really embraced that run first identity. But I don't think, you look ahead and it's Miles Sanders, it's Kenneth Gainwell, and is Boston Scott, I think, is still on the roster. None of those seem like world beaters to me. I think they've given Miles Sanders plenty of opportunities.
Boston Scott is the giant killer, though, and 88 touches led to 8 touchdowns last year. Magic eights for Boston Scott. You say that Brooks is going to get some of that.
I can get Brooks for in the 19th or 20th, and I think just given the offense and who's ahead of him, I just like that as a flyer. I'll go the complete opposite direction for the player that I'm avoiding. I'll take a first rounder. I will not draft Mark Andrews this season. I think it just falls down to 2 big problems. Last year was an anomaly from a passing perspective. The Ravens want to run more. They went out and they invested in a center, a tackle, 2 tight ends, and a running back in the draft. They only resorted to that strategy last year because they lost their entire running back room and were relying on, pretty old veterans, and they lost their secondary. And so they had no defense to stop anybody. I think they're going to get back to the run first. And the second problem with Mark Andrews is he had the big spikes in production when Lamar wasn't playing. When Lamar played, he saw much more consistent with his historical patterns. So I think in order to pay off with his first round price tag, he has to repeat basically what he did. And I think there's a couple good reasons as to why he's just not going to. So that's too much for me to risk in the first.
One more question for you, Jack. I apologize. This is something I said we're going to get to. The professor, Hudson Kern Reed, wants to know in the chat room, red flags for Treylon Burks. Now, I know initially in the mini camp, it sounded like he was out of breath or he wasn't in shape and he had to sit out for some. I was never a big Treylon Burks guy, given not that I know Dizzle always says I'm way into too into the relative athletic score, but his was really bad. And I know a lot of people are very excited about him. And as Kern points out in the chat, he's kind of a polarizing guy. Like either you love Treylon Burks or you're really, really nervous about him. How do you fall in on him?
I think I take advantage of that polarization. I think people already had strong opinions about him. The news about the athleticism, I think I heard somewhere, he has asthma and it was just an issue of having the inhaler on hand. So I've seen plenty of clips of him where he looks plenty athletic to me, certainly not wheezing on the side of the field. So I think that was kind of I'm not saying that he's going to be Jamar Chase, but I think the, Treylon Burks gasping for air is the Jamar Chase dropped too many balls, a preseason story for this year. So
that was another Michael K report, hot off the press.
I've seen him in drafts fall to like the late 8th, and I'm just fine taking him when he falls. There's a room of people that have kind of made up their mind. I'll take advantage of that.
We got to take advantage of a very intelligent fantasy football player's father tonight.
That's right.
Since Adair couldn't be with us, we had to settle for you, Jack, which we really appreciate. We're very thankful that you could come aboard. Congratulations on your previous championships. Good luck as you chase that $500,000 grand prize in the Footballguys Players Championship this year. We really appreciate you carving out some time for us tonight, man.
Thanks so much. It was a blast. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Jack Kohlscheen, ladies and gentlemen, popping aboard, talk a little. This was the AFC West High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. Brought to you by Southwest Airlines. I don't know. Something that goes on. Are there still Chi-Chis out there? I don't even know anymore. But yeah, there was good stuff from him. We got into a lot of Charger stuff, a lot of Broncos stuff for sure. This is a guy that I can't tell if the knowledge comes from his daughter or not, but this is a dude who knows what he's doing once again, Farrell. And all the viewers got treated to us picking the brain of a guy who's going to win a lot more leagues again this year.
And just like all Chargers fans, you notice he didn't say a damn thing about the Raiders. Not a thing. Didn't mention.
Well, that's because you always we always.
I told him I drafted 5 Raiders, and he just stared at the screen. You know.
Well, did you say that was the league that you had like 5 Raiders and then 4 Jaguars, and then we just talked about the Jaguars?
Yeah, I gave him a chance, and he went right for the Jags. You know, that's where he went. But you know, when we get the Adair reveal of who has the nicest face.
Yeah, well, we know who's winning that, and it's not me.
Yeah, I think you're winning, Boggy.
It's
you got
not,
good eyes when you're off of that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Let's get to some emails here. The last couple of minutes of the program this week. Ken in Gainesville, Florida, dear Balky and Farrell, of all the rookie receivers, who landed in the best spot for fantasy production? And there's a lot of rookie receivers, obviously, this year.
Players.
The 2 guys from Ohio State. We talked about Jamison Williams, obviously Drake London. We haven't really talked a whole lot about Drake London on this program. He's another guy that's very exciting for fantasy. Christian Watson, Sky Moore, who were not – those guys ended up being drafted as late first-round picks in the FFPC rookie draft. They were not necessarily always going there. Or they weren't necessarily going ahead of some of the players who went in the second round. But then they ended up going there after the NFL draft because Green Bay scooped Watson up, because Kansas City scooped Sky Moore up. So there's a lot of players, a lot to unpack here, Farrell. Is there one or maybe 2 or maybe none that stick out because you like a lot of them?
Yeah, I do. Naturally, Sky Moore gets a tip of the cap because of his matchup with quarterback. But I'm going. It was John from North Canton, Ohio, that sent in the trick question tonight, and until he got that question, our Jack was the kid that was batting 1,000. And, he swung and missed, I think, on this curveball with Alec Pierce. I go all the way. Alec Pierce was the 12th receiver picked. And Alec Pierce, to me, has the best landing spot of all rookie wide receivers. He comes in to where he is clearly going to be the number 2 wide receiver. And if you don't understand who Alec Pierce is, everybody knows my love of Claypool. Alec Pierce actually impresses me a little more coming out of Cincinnati. Now, at Cincinnati, he didn't catch balls like some of these guys around the country. That's because of the offensive scheme. They really didn't know they really didn't know exactly where they wanted to use this player. But he'd still put together excellent numbers. Alex Pierce now gets in a situation where he benefits from Matt Ryan on an offense that wants to run the ball. The coach, last week's podcast, the coach gave us a little bit of a glimpse of what he plans to do when he was talking about Hines. Hines is the underneath guy. Pierce is the over middle guy. Pittman is the guy that we fed the ball to. And Balky, I don't have to remind you what Matt Ryan can do with 2 very elite receivers. Go look up Alec Pierce, realize that he's 6'3", realize that he runs a 4.41 40 at the combine, and he jumps damn near out of the building over 40 in a vertical. I like those numbers. Much better than the Drake London, the kid at Atlanta, who will be with Marcus Mariota. I like everything about this player, where he's going to be and what they're going to ask him to do. And I think this is a fantastic draft pick. And you gave us the mojo in the 14th round. Virtual thievery by the double-digit weeks when we're playing for a championship. I think Alec Pierce will deliver that to some fantasy owners.
I'll say this too about Pierce, and I don't think Dizzle minds me saying this. Maybe he does, and I'll get fried for it when he sees this later. But I know he's been drafting Alec Pierce in some of his private dynasty leagues quite a bit in the second round. So I know he's a big fan of him, and we all know how intelligent Dizzle is when it comes to fantasy football.
Genius.
So now we got Farrell and the Dizzle on the Alec Pierce train. You should be too.
Can you just imagine what they serve at one of those private dynasty leagues?
No.
Can you just what we got to do to get in one of those?
Tell you this. Those leagues are the reason why when you go to a nice seafood restaurant, that lobster is always listed at market price.
Yeah,
they never have a fixed price. It's because
it's a market price menu. Yeah.
All right. So Kern also wants to know, and I know I've touched on this before in the past, but he wants to know, as a Packers fan, what are you expecting from Christian Watson? Here's the thing, and I'll make this brief. I have no idea what to expect. History would say, as far as rookie receivers at Aaron Rodgers, they don't really put up big numbers, but we also have not seen a situation where the Packers trade 2 second-round picks to move up to select a guy and have a wide receiver room as bereft of talent as they do now. You know, when Adams and James Jones and Greg Jennings and Jordy Nelson, all these guys were drafted, there was already like at least one other established receiver there. You don't really see an established receiver there. Yeah, there's Randall Cobb. Okay, that's fine. Alan Lazard, all right. Nobody near the talent of some of these other guys. Christian Watson's going to be counted on a lot this year. Christian Watson's going to get a lot of opportunities. He has been having a little bit of the dropsies, which was a red flag for him coming into the NFL draft as far as the OTAs goes, how he's performing. But jet sweeps are going to be involved with him as well. So I'm going in with lowered expectations. I like him for dynasty. This season, I don't know if you want to get crazy with him in drafts, but as a number 5 or 6 receiver, you could do a lot worse for upside. And I'll just leave it with that on Christian Watson. Now, a guy who, to me, does not represent similar upside as Christian Watson is Curtis Samuel. And that's our next email that we have. Kevin in Manchester, Connecticut. I know it hasn't been great for him in Washington, but is Curtis Samuel worth a roster spot this season? And as we look at the mojo for Curtis Samuel this year, a guy who I don't think anybody is excited about drafting, 18th round wide receiver 90. Farrell, are you looking elsewhere when it gets to be that late in the football guys drafts, or is this a guy that you bet on a bounce back where he can outperform that draft spot?
Oddly enough, I think I would like to have this player on a couple of my teams. The familiarity with the coach and the reason that he is there, now the quarterback that he gets. I think a lot of this is very much to the credit of, I think it's a good matchup between this player and the quarterback. Now, guys, when there's a lot of talent in this wide receiver pool that we can get at 18, Curtis Samuel, I'll probably wait on him. But if I like what I see early, he'd be a waiver wire pickup for me.
Okay. And I'll just say this, as far as like, you're saying, well, Balky, who else is going there? This is like Terrace Marshall, Nico Collins, KJ Hamler, Laviska Shenault. So all guys that have significant upside at that point. And you can make the argument that all those guys have more upside than Curtis Samuel. So maybe I would go elsewhere there. And maybe, Farrell, I'm with you, because if I miss out on him the 18th, he'll probably be out there on the waiver wire more than likely in a bunch of my leagues. And if he has a big week 1, I can pay up for him. Preseason waiver wire, maybe I want to take a chance on him if one of my guys gets hurt or something like that. But I'm not bending over backwards to pick him late.
Even if he doesn't have that big week 1, if you like the way he's moving, if you like the way that he is, that it appears to be targeted, if you can see some potential aspect for him, if he's on the field a lot, then go ahead and add him to your roster.
The other thing to think about, too, is, they have a rookie in Jahan Dotson there. Mm-hmm. They obviously have McLaurin, who's a stud. But then after that, I mean, are you really excited about any other Commanders receiver? Probably not. And Samuel actually has he's got the pedigree, and then he's already done it a little bit in Carolina, too, which is more than you could say for a lot of the other Washington receivers. A guy who has been doing it all season long on this podcast is Farrell Elliott, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Farrell, the Run to Daylight Championship has reached only 3 drafts left. The next one taking place Sunday night, 8:00 Eastern. That one's almost filled. We only got 5 teams left in that. So I would encourage everybody to check that out to try to win a $5,000 grand prize for just a $200 buy-in. And, of course, the main events are picking up as far as registration goes. They start, and we're just probably a little over a month, right, before
Crazy.
The first Kentucky main event draft goes off. I'm excited for that. You can register for that at kffsc.com. Gentlemen and a scholar, and we will talk to you not next Friday, but next Thursday, my friend.
Thursday it is. See you then, Bob.
Farrell Elliott, you follow him on Twitter at jfarrellelliott. You follow the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship on Twitter at, you guessed it, KFFSC. I want to thank Jack Kohlscheen. I want to thank Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you for hanging out and watching us on YouTube, Facebook, and or Twitter, or maybe you're streaming the download later. I don't know. We just are very appreciative that you check out this podcast because we love making it for you. We are back, as I alluded to, with Farrell. Back next Thursday, 10/9 Central. No show on Friday. We're going to be back on Thursday. 4-time FFPC main event and Football Guys champ and 2022 Pros versus Joe participant. Shane Wingard will be on the show this coming Thursday at 10/9 Central. The Football Guys early bird promo is live, active for a $35 discount. Just register by the end of the month. Draft by July 15th. You get a free $35 added to your account, and we'll do that up to 3 times for you, which is awesome. Great deal, in my opinion. The 2022 FFPC Best Ball Tournament has drafts filling every day. If you want to invest $125 to try to win $200,000, that is a lot of fun and a strong way to make this a great 2022, obviously. The inaugural Superflex Best Ball Tournament launched $35 entry fee, and that one can win you 10 grand. Dynasty startups popping off tomorrow. So make sure if you want to add any maiden drafts this year, now's the time to do it. Plenty of slow live and sit and go best ball options at myffpc.com. I do want to remind everybody that the Pros versus Joes drafts do not start for another month and a half, roughly. We're going to broadcast them here. And if you missed the announcement earlier of all the Joes that are in, within the hour, roughly, you can check out the FFPC message boards, the FFPC Twitter, FFPC Facebook. We'll have links posted there to see if you got in or not. Thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out and watching tonight. Hopefully this was a success no matter which platform you watched it on. And, of course, your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Before I let you go tonight, one other thing I do want to just say, Jeff Gladney and Marion Barber lost their lives this week, 2 former NFL players. Obviously, Marion Barber, a guy that we're very familiar with fantasy football. I don't want to dwell on it too much. I mean, it stinks that these guys are gone this soon. But I will say this, not that I'm honoring Marion Barber's legacy or memory by doing this, but I did go back and watch some Marion Barber highlights from when he was at the peak of his powers with Dallas, when he went to the Pro Bowl. Just awesome stuff. And just, to savor that memory one last time, or until the next time I do it, was pretty cool. So I'd encourage you, go on YouTube, go on Twitter, check out the Marion Barber highlight videos, and obviously thoughts and prayers, positive, vibes, anything we can send to the Gladney and Barber families. We're doing it here with the FFPC High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. We'll talk with you again next Thursday, everybody.